February 19th, 1945. Dawn over Iwo Jima. A thin, sulphurous mist clings to the black volcanic sand as the first pale light touches the eastern horizon. From the lip of a shattered bunker on the northern slope of Mount Suribachi, a Japanese infantry sergeant lifts his field glasses. The sea, which for months had been an empty, comforting void, is no longer empty. It has become solid. A forest of steel masts, funnels, and gun barrels stretches from the curvature of the earth to the surf line itself. Hundreds of ships, transports, battleships, cruisers, destroyers, carriers lie anchored in perfect formation, their gray hulls catching the rising sun like a vast metallic harvest. The sergeant lowers the glasses slowly. His breath fogs in the chill morning air. For the first time in years, the Pacific Ocean has ceased to be Japanese. This moment marked the beginning of the end for the defensive strategy that Japan had staked its empire upon. Iwo Jima, a pork-chop-shaped island of 8 square miles, had been fortified for over a year into what its commander, Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, called an unbreakable fortress. 30,000 Japanese troops, infantry, engineers, artillerymen, had poured concrete, dug tunnels, and emplaced guns in anticipation of the inevitable American landing. Their orders were clear: bleed the enemy so severely that the cost of taking the island would force Washington to reconsider the advance toward the homeland. Yet on that February morning, as the horizon filled with the United States Navy's Task Force 58 and the 5th Amphibious Corps, the soldiers hidden in the ash and rock understood that the arithmetic had changed forever. For years, Japanese propaganda had painted America as a decadent nation of jazz music and weak-willed consumers, incapable of sustained sacrifice. The infantry on Iwo Jima had been told to expect a hesitant enemy, one that would flinch at the first heavy casualties and withdraw. They imagined sporadic landings, cautious advances, perhaps even negotiations after a few thousand dead. Instead, they watched an armada whose scale defied comprehension. Operation Detachment assembled 880 ships, the largest concentration of naval power in history to that date. 70,000 Marines waited in the holds of transports. 11 battleships, including veterans of Pearl Harbor like West Virginia and Tennessee, stood ready to deliver broadsides that could level mountains. Overhead, carrier aircraft darkened the sky in waves that seemed endless. The Japanese soldier peering from his cave mouth expected a raid. What he witnessed was industrial annihilation made visible. Historical records confirm the staggering disparity. The U.S. Navy's official history lists 450 ships directly supporting the landings on D-Day alone, with another 400 in close reserve or screening positions farther out. Battleship main batteries fired 14-inch and 16-inch shells weighing up to 2,700 pounds each. On the first day of pre-landing bombardment, February 19th to 21st, more than 40,000 tons of ordnance fell on the island. Japanese coastal guns, carefully camouflaged and pre-registered, scored occasional hits. Destroyers were straddled, a few transports damaged, but the sheer volume of American metal overwhelmed any hope of decisive interference. Admiral Raymond Spruance later wrote that the fleet's presence made the sea itself an American weapon. From the Japanese perspective, that weapon now pressed against the shore like an iron tide. The recurring symbol that haunted the defenders was the sound of aircraft engines, specifically the deep, unbroken roar of radial engines overhead. Throughout the campaign, whenever a Japanese soldier emerged from his tunnel or bunker, he heard it, a constant, layered drone that never diminished day or night. It was the sound of American abundance made audible. Hellcat and Corsair fighters patrolled in overlapping umbrellas. Avenger torpedo bombers orbited with bombs slung beneath their wings. Mitchell medium bombers arrived from newly captured Marianas Fields to drop 1,000-pounders on pinpoint targets. The Imperial Navy's air arm had long since been shattered at Philippine Sea and Leyte Gulf. On Iwo Jima, the defenders possessed fewer than 22 operational aircraft, most destroyed on the ground within hours. The sky, once a neutral expanse, had become exclusively American territory. That omnipresent engine note reminded every infantryman that the enemy could replace losses faster than Japan could count them. As the days ground on, the emotional contrast sharpened into despair. Kuribayashi's men fought with extraordinary tenacity. Few surrendered, most died in place, but the sight of that endless fleet eroded the ideological foundation upon which their resistance rested. They had been taught that Bushido spirit could overcome material inferiority. Yet each morning the horizon revealed fresh ships arriving to replace any damage to the day before. Landing craft came ashore in waves that seemed inexhaustible. Tanks rolled off LSTs as though from an assembly line. Ammunition and rations piled up on the beaches faster than Japanese mortars could disperse them. A captured diary entry from a private in the 26th Tank Regiment, recovered after the battle, reads, "The enemy ships are more numerous than the stars. When one is hit, two more appear. We fight bravely, but how can courage sink in ocean?" The transformation in perception was profound and irreversible. Before February 1945, many Japanese soldiers still believed the war could be prolonged into a negotiated peace. After witnessing the armada off Iwo Jima, that belief evaporated. Kuribayashi himself, in one of his last letters smuggled off the island, wrote to his wife, "The Americans possess strength beyond imagining. Do not expect my return." Intelligence intercepts and post-war interrogations reveal that junior officers began to speak privately of inevitable defeat as early as the third day of the landing. The fleet visible from every high point on the island became the physical proof that Japan's strategy of attrition had failed. The Americans were willing and able to pay the price and still possess overwhelming reserves. The campaign lasted 36 days. When organized resistance ended on March 26, 1945, approximately 21,000 Japanese defenders lay dead. Only 216 had allowed themselves to be taken prisoner. The American losses were grievous: 6,821 killed, 19,217 wounded, but the fleet sailed away largely intact, ready for the next operation. Iwo Jima's airfields, once repaired, became emergency landing strips for B-29s raiding the Japanese homeland, saving thousands of American aircrew lives. The cost was terrible, yet the strategic result unequivocal. In the end, those Japanese infantrymen staring at an ocean filled with American ships beheld more than a naval armada. They beheld the material expression of a society capable of converting the resources of an entire continent into instruments of war without pause. The endless gray holes stretching to the horizon were not merely warships. They were the visible evidence of democratic industrial power mobilized on a scale no authoritarian state could match. The roar of aircraft engines overhead spoke not only of tactical air superiority, but of assembly lines turning out engines by the tens of thousands, of pilots trained in safety over Florida skies, of fuel pumped from Texas fields in quantities that dwarfed Japan's entire annual production. That February dawn on Iwo Jima revealed a larger truth. Freedom, when defended with resolute and backed by abundance, becomes an unstoppable force. The Japanese soldier, crouched in his bunker amid the volcanic ash, understood in his final weeks that the war had already been decided far across the Pacific, decided in shipyards, in factories, in the unforced labor of millions who believed the cause worth any sacrifice. The ocean filled with ships was not just a fleet. It was the embodiment of a nation's will translated into steel, a will that would not break, could not be negotiated away, and would not stop until the war was won. In the silence that followed the guns, that truth lingered over the black sands of Iwo Jima like the morning mist, quiet, inexorable, and eternal.